We'll start with a roll call of members. Kristen Furtak, Chair.
Sean Manning.
Warren Brees.
Ken Woodward.
Angela Resco.
Dave Murphy.
Great. Oh, and Brian on the...
Brian Walsh.
And Brian Walsh is joining us
Yeah,
remotely.
we can't hear him.
We can't hear you, Brian, but we acknowledge that you are here. Thank you. So to go through our agenda, we'd like to approve the agenda, but there is an amendment to the agenda to approve the meeting minutes, which is not noted on the original agenda for February 27th. So that was our original meeting here.
I make a motion we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, great. As well as approving the approve the minutes of the March 9th special meeting that we had when we toured Gildersleeve and Brownstone.
I make a motion we approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay, great. Okay.
Now
Mhm.
we have to vote to approve. Yeah.
Okay.
Was that for both sets?
Yeah, that's for both.
Any discussion or?
Say questions.
Okay. Okay, so any questions or conversation in regards to those minutes? Okay. We go ahead to vote.
All approved?
All approve?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Hearing them.
Hearing none. We carry on. Thank you for helping me.
Motion passes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so to start our meeting, what we would like to do to begin is recap the tours of Gildersleeve School in Brownstone. We would like to open it up to the Gildersleeve. That's where we first started our tour on March 9th. So I open it up to the committee to regards to the Gildersleeve tour.
Seemed to me like, you know, building is, in my opinion, is in good shape. You know, the gym has no place to sit, which is a bummer. But the building itself, you know, seemed to be intact. Reading through the reports, didn't find anything critical that actually has to be done, but there's all the recommendations for maintenance upgrades. But in my opinion, it's in good shape.
I agree with Ken, going through that after actually looking at it. After reading the sight lines, I think it's in better shape than I anticipated. The thing that really concerns me is a lot of what you're seeing is maintenance over the years that was not taken care of. You have wallpaper that's peeling from the walls, which you can tell by the color of it. It's been going on for years. Upkeep in the ceiling tiles. You have stained ceiling tiles that weren't replaced. You had ceiling tiles that were missing. The gymnasium floor, apparently there was a leak at some point, and they did what they, I guess, think is a sufficient fix. But overall, the majority of what I saw was maintenance upkeep with the building, which we've discussed in the past.
I mean, my takeaway, again, looking at it from a different perspective, is that, yeah, the blocks and the center walls look like they're sturdy, but it's not good for a school facility. Single pane windows, lack of a double entrance, lack of air conditioning, a steam system, which one gentleman, I forget who said that, said, you know, one major catastrophic incident could be all that it takes. There's nobody who maintains those systems anymore, things of that nature. So there's a lot of things behind the walls, you know, a lot of, you know, code violation, code things that need to be upgraded, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff that you know, we don't see as we look at it.
Right. I think, Dave, what I'm looking at is not looking at it as if I was today continuing to keep that as a school.
Oh, yeah,
But if
yeah.
I was looking at it to say, okay, what do we actually need to do from what they're telling us to be able to, yes, I agree, we have to do so with that HVAC system if we were to keep that school, or if I were to buy the building and convert it
Yeah.
to something else. I agree with the single pane windows, but I also disagree that I think we need to spend as much money as they're saying we need to spend on some of the components like the electrical and some of the other things. Like I think Warren had said in the meeting, and it might not have been Warren, but I believe it was a building like that, you want to look at, start at your roof and kind of come down and see the structural content of the building. You know, your cinder block walls, your flooring, that sort of thing, to see where you stand with the actual building.
Well, and all the maintenance that it does, it needs a ton of maintenance.
Right.
We know this, and upgrades, right? You would start with the roof.
Right.
It all doesn't need to be done, like Ken said, it's, for the most part, is intact. You know, we're gonna live with the single pane windows. Like Sean said, maintenance is huge. I mean, ceiling tiles, how do you know if the leak was yesterday or 10 years ago and yesterday, you know? You don't know,
Right.
you know? I mean, that concerns me with all the schools, actually, and how they're just touring these two schools, you know, the maintenance. I guess I'm not sure where that comes from in town, you know, but, and also, with the use of these buildings, and I know we're talking, you know, millions of dollars here. You know, that needs to go in, between all these buildings, a park and rec was a big one for me. Obviously, they need 2 gyms, no matter what. So whatever conclusion we come up with, we need to make sure we have 2 gyms, because that'd be a terrible program to cut, I think. I know we all need to make our concessions in certain areas, but I don't believe that should be one of them, at all, so.
Well, I don't know where you're going with that, but I don't think we're gonna keep a building just so we have a gym. That's not the goal of this committee. This committee is not to even think of that as a school facility. What can it be used as when it's decommissioned?
Right,
So-
and one of the things
So
we
is the
can
town
think of-
willing to take on that responsibility to have a gym for the park and rec? That's the decision. We'll have to make a recommendation.
Right.
Right.
Any other thoughts in regards to the walkthrough of Gildersleeve? I think, you know, we focus a lot on the building. I think there's a lot of property there that when we were, you know, we were able to walk around and understand that there's a huge field behind the school, you know, so there's a lot of components that could be considered, I think, in just the property alone. So I think it was helpful to walk that.
Is on the table the fact of just selling it as is and profiting from that money versus putting any money into these buildings?
Yeah, I think it's
I
up for
mean, if we
consideration.
sell it as is, the building, the lot, and everything, that money could be turned around and used for brownstone. And
My
get that back
personal
into it.
opinion is, yeah, we need to, as a committee, we're talking about the tour, but we need to lay out A, B, C, D, E, and F. A is we sell it as is, B is we demolish it and sell it as is, C is we, you know, repurpose it to something else, whatever, and we come up with all these different options, and then we present the top 3 to the town, and they can make a decision
Yep.
if they want down the road.
I would just hate to sink more money into it if, anyway, that's just my opinion.
I would suggest that, is he saying something? No.
Can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
Yeah, now we
now.
can.
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, before we can really make a decision on what needs to happen there is to understand if that sightlines report needs to be updated, what the actual abatement of that property would be if there's hazardous material, because any potential sale of that property, you know, you would have to either do the abatement ahead of time or sell it knowing that you're gonna have to spend, you know, $1 million or $2 million in abatement, which sounds high to me, and Ken and I, you know, we were talking about that a little bit, so getting a current assessment of the hazardous materials there and what that actually means and what those costs would be for any potential reuse or resale.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it wouldn't be profitable to disclose that information and sell it as is?
No, I'm just saying we need to understand,
Yeah.
if you put let's just say you put a $4 million price tag on the building, knowing that it needs $1 million of abatement, or $2 million of abatement. So that's gotta be deducted from any potential, because any buyer's gonna do their due diligence and know that before they buy the building. So we need to understand that, to understand what the true value of that building is, the cost, the monetary value to the town.
So does it make sense to, just to reiterate what the goal is? It's come up with suggestions on what these properties could be used for. And if, I'd be willing to put together a matrix of the property, and then we can come up with the pros and the cons. Let's say Gildersleeve sell as is, pros,
Mhm.
cons.
Right.
And then if we think it's appropriate to attribute a cost range or something to that amount. And then I think that way, once we, that'll get us to a point where we can see what are the pros and the cons, what makes sense for us to suggest. And maybe it's not one answer, but at least it's a plan
Right.
to, for the town to know for June or the referendum or whenever that is.
Yeah, we definitely need to have some type of, like Brian says, an up-to-date real number on the abatement of whatever's hazardous in that building. Because we know that's gonna be, has to be disclosed. And somebody's gotta take whether we have to do the remediation before we sell it, or we have to discount the building. So I think that would be the spot, where I would start is with that. And then, I think, Ken, then you could work from there, and then we could
Come up with
Come
something.
up
Brian,
with
how
something.
hard is it just to get someone to come in and give us a quote? Do you
It
know?
costs money.
Well,
Does
getting
it cost
somebody to
money?
quote the abatement's not the tough part, it's identifying what needs to be abated, right?
It's
So
the
that's
test.
it's getting, doing the sampling, and maybe it's just a matter of updating the report that's already been issued, but having somebody price that is not the challenge. It's understanding what needs to be abated.
Yeah, I mean, why would it be any different than what the report shows?
It shouldn't, I haven't read all the report, but I don't know if it suggests that there's, insulation elbows, and I don't know if anybody's taken the time to see how many elbows there are. That's what I'm saying, so if the assessment just identifies what could be hot, quote unquote hot, for, hazardous material within the building, but did they give a quantity? Do they
Yeah.
say there's 200 elbows or 30,000 elbows?
Right.
That I don't think we know.
Well, wouldn't it be smart for us to get that information?
Yes.
Should we?
Well, let me check, because I know that Fryer Architect was gonna go in and did a separate assessment, and they were getting an estimate from a construction crew about the demolition. Maybe embedded in that, asking that question, there's some of that detailed information.
So I'm
You know
gonna
what I mean?
stop there just for a minute, because I think we're going into kind of the next phase of the agenda. I think, let's talk about our walkthrough at Brownstone a little bit. I think we're all good on Gildersleeve, but if we can transition a little bit of our walkthrough at Brownstone, if anybody wants to start that conversation.
I'm sorry, let me just make one more comment
Sure.
about Gildersleeve, is that one thing that wasn't mentioned. So that, there's multiple, I'd say six or more locations in that building where there was apparent water infiltration issues, and whether that's from the roof or from the heating system or a combination thereof. The one in the gym, obviously roof leak. The one, throughout the hallways, there's evidence of water damage, isolated of water damage, but water damage nonetheless. And it's, looking at it at face value, it's hard to say whether that is a combination of, whether it's clearly a deferred maintenance issue, whether that is, not maintaining the heating system because there's a leaking valve or a leaking pipe, or if it's a roof drain leader, for roof, for rainwater, things like that. But, identifying the source of those is another potential issue and a potential cost issue on a consideration of resale. What would need to be done to make those repairs stop the water from coming into the building.
Okay. Any last minute thoughts before we go over to Brownstone? Okay. Who would like to start that conversation?
I'll start that one.
Okay.
You know, it's a tough one because it's a, you know, it's a monument to Portland. And, you know, there's a lot of memories and history and all those things in that building and that surround that building. But to me, there are definitely some positive things about it in, as far as the space goes and what could be developed, but there's some real challenges with most of it, especially the cost of any type of, you know, according to the report, the cost to just bring it up to speed. So, in my overall view, it's a real tough one because it has a large auditorium. What could be done with that? It has a gym with a place to sit, but it's somewhat in a weird spot. It's accessible, but it's weird down in the dungeon or whatever. But and then you got the heating system, which is antiquated, which will, you know, be expensive to do anything with. But you know, there's opportunities. To me, it's a matter of, is it worth is it worth to do any type of upgrades, or what are the real options? You know, as far, and the solar, we got to follow up with the solar. What's the buyout on the solar? And what else was I thinking about? Yeah, I have other thoughts, but they're kind of probably down the conversation road. You guys?
Yeah, I've got just a quick comment. Going back to Gildersleeve selling that as is, using that money to go into Brownstone. And our last meeting, we heard from Ruth Mayo's department. We heard from Park and Rec. We heard from these committees, these departments in our town that need this space. They need this space. We have a beautiful auditorium that we could rent out for plays, things like that. Why don't we become the landlord of Brownstone and use that for our department, for all of our space issues? We have the space problems here in town, and we have a beautiful building. Yes, it does need money sunk into it, but with the sale of Gildersleeve, maybe we do have a couple of dollars that we can put into Brownstone and at least bring it to a point where we can see if the rental income, if whatever we decide to do, can bring it more up to point. That's a thought.
That's an option. We're only here for options. We don't know what
Absolutely.
it's gonna be. It's just an option of which
It's just
option.
an idea.
I mean, back to the space thing for the basketball, was it you, or I can't remember, somebody made a great suggestion about the steel building?
That was a
Brian.
great
Brian,
suggestion, yeah.
The steel building
Yeah.
that, you know, some towns have opted to, rather
The
than
flex
remodel,
building?
put in a nice steel building where they can make it as a multifunctional space where they can do basketball, or they can do park and rec activities and things like that. And that's something else we could explore with if we make some money on one of the buildings as well.
Well, I think that was part of the study that was done to talk about swing space. Dr.
Swing
Britton
space.
brought that up as well, saying that in any scenario, if Brownstone or Gildersleeve were to be, sold or demolished or whatever the ultimate decision is, but the need for swing space while they're doing renovations and additions at Valley View is a great need, because they would be displacing students in one capacity or another. So what I mentioned was that, the Berlin school system faced a similar challenge when they redid their high school, and in lieu of dealing with the swing space issues, they actually, built a pre-engineered metal building. I don't know what the dimensions are of it, but it was big enough to, it was greater than 10,000 square feet. And, they used that as their swing space during their remodeling, and ultimately they used it for athletic space, they used it for classroom space, and when it was all done, when the school was finished, they transitioned that space into a, you know, a tech space and something else. So it was an investment towards the future design of the building it solved multiple problems along the way, and the issue of the swing space plus an ultimate need for tech space, shop space, et cetera. So something like that could be considered in the grand scheme to help offset the issues of having enough gymnasium space or recreation space.
Yeah, good point. Just a side note, when we do go down the road and we go down this path, we have enough capacity in Gildersleeve and Brownstone in the middle school to absorb everyone in Valley View during construction. We do not need to have any extra. Most schools do construction nights and weekends and disruptive of the schools.
Yeah.
We are at a nice position where we can move the students out, do the whole remodeling, whatever, quickly as they can, and then we move them back in. That'll be a bonus.
That's after the addition or whatever at Valley View is completed, you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
So does that impact us with the potential of selling either of those properties then, if we are reliant on them to be
Yeah,
our
you gotta
swing
wait till
space?
it's
we
done,
gotta
you gotta
wait
wait till
for it
Valley
to be
View
done.
construction's completed before you can move on with the other facility.
One thing I haven't been in the biz other than the auditorium in quite a while, and when we did that walkthrough, especially upstairs, in the different wings and the different configurations of the rooms, the sizes of them, looking at how you would move, centralize your infrastructure if you were to break it up into different departments, let's say, or apartments or compartments or whatever you wanted to do. It's a big challenge, like Ken said. There's a lot of challenges with that building. The other thing is there's a lot of space in that building, which when we're making recommendations, whether we say, okay, let's see what we can get for Gildersleeve, dump that back into biz as a recommendation, we have to figure out what we're gonna do with, I think, have some sort of an idea of how much of that space is usable for the town, how much is an outside service willing to take it, and then can we rent classroom space to Oakwood or
Oak Hill.
Oak Hill and still maintain part of it for town use. So there's a lot of obstacles. None of this is cut and dry, and I think that building is gonna be the biggest challenge we're gonna face just because of the sheer size of it.
And any, keep in mind that any potential reuse of that building, the infrastructure repairs, not even upgrades, the repairs to keep the building operating, there was an $8 million price tag that was thrown out there. Those repairs still exist in any future configuration of that building. Right? So whether the town keeps it or not, whether it's sold or not, those costs are real costs, and that's got to be considered. It's not like we can just use it for another use and not have to spend that money. You still need to spend that money no matter what. The other thing to consider that we talked about in any potential adaptive reuse of that building is that if the building is, what do we say, it's almost 100 years old? The original portion of Brownstone, and it's not, the square footage of the building is greater than what would be necessary today for a similar building. The hallways are larger, they're very wide hallways. If any potential adaptive reuse of that building for, say, assisted living or apartments or offices, you're dealing with these oversized corridors that you still have to heat and maintain. So it's a challenge, right? So it's everything is oversized from what you would need it to be today. In your typical apartment building, a hallway might be 5 or 6 feet wide, where those hallways are almost 12 feet wide. So you have a lot of wasted space within that existing footprint of the building. And we also talked about the auditorium. There was an idea that was thrown out about potentially using the auditorium and or the gymnasium, but that, there's no way to easily segregate those parts of the building. All the utility infrastructure runs back through the base building systems. The main electrical, the main heating all comes from the base building part of Brownstone. So there's no way to easily segregate and say, well, we could just, take over or rent the auditorium to the town and let the new owners do that, or the gym, but it's not so easily to be segregated.
That's true, but there is high ceilings.
Right.
There is some access there to do something, but I don't disagree with anything you said. Just to know that there's some avenues where some things could happen.
It'd be a large dollar
Yeah,
amounts just
obviously,
to
a developer that
segregate
was
those
brought in,
rooms up.
that would be
Yeah.
their issue to deal with, right? They could come up with,
Yeah, good
the pie in the sky ideas of how to redo that, but there's challenges.
Right.
That's, it's not, the utilities in this building, unlike a hotel or an office building, are not vertically oriented. So there's, to go back and add in spaces for kitchens and bathrooms and things in that area is very expensive. But that wouldn't necessarily be the town's problem. If you're gonna
Right.
sell the building, that becomes the developer's problem, but it's a challenge.
Mhm. Agreed. Any other thoughts on the walkthrough?
I think that just realizing the future development that's happening
Mhm.
now, next door, with the spa and, Brainerd Place, in this really awesome connection, which is this Brownstone Intermediate. And now, now is the time to be really thinking about how does that tie everything together. I mean, we finally have an opportunity to make this downtown
Mm-hmm.
really something
Right.
more than it has been, but,
Would the spa like to buy the Brownstone building?
Well, yeah, and
And convert it? I mean, they seem like they've got plenty of money if they're doing this beautiful Norwich spa in our town. Maybe they would like the hotel to go
Well,
with
yeah, I
it.
think,
Leave it up to them.
and I think we talked about that briefly at the last meeting, if we want to transition to some of the ideas, to piggyback what we talked about at the last meeting, was the idea of, as silly as it is, but I think it's an option, does a hotel here make sense? Even if it's a boutique hotel, it's not like a Marriott, but it might have, 8 to 10 rooms that would help support bringing people to the spa, bringing people into town. Is there enough livelihood to keep people here to want to come visit Portland and stay here? So I did do some research, and I can share this. There are a couple of examples of developers that have come in and bought schools and have made them. There's some in Iowa, there's some in West Virginia, and they're very successful. And they're the cute little kind of boutique-y things. They have the different types of rooms, they have restaurants within them, they're winning out different kinds of awards. They're all historical schools circa around the same time as Biz, and like I said, I can share that, but I think that there's something to be said about it that might be worth at least keeping on the list for now, but it's finding that right person, right? Because I think as we're walking around the site, there's part of Biz that wasn't the original building, that if it becomes too large, could that be removed and really focus on the main bar, the facade that you see from the main street? There's something that we want to be able to, hold on to there. So is that something that we put in if we are to sell it, that fabric of that building is maintained somehow? But, that's obviously getting into the details, but I think that there's, like you're saying, Ken, what is that connection that could be made between the apartments and the spa, especially in the great location that it is?
We're still dealing with the same problem with remediation.
Right.
So what's the building worth after that's done?
Right. It's finding that person that's willing to buy Biz, knowing that there's additional, $8 million costs
Right.
potentially that they would have to cover. But is it better for that person to take that cost as opposed to us paying that and then selling it, or reusing it at that point?
yeah, it might be worth, reaching out to someone, a developer, to come in and talk about things like what would make this attractive to them?
Mhm.
What would make a development like this attractive?
Yeah.
Would they be ever interested in a private-public partnership? Why would they be interested in that?
Mhm.
What could we do to make that interest? Or, might just be worth hearing what they say.
Yeah, agreed.
Not necessarily, about the process, not necessarily specifics about that project.
Mhm.
How many units can you get in, how many this and that, but what makes sense? I mean, I'd like to hear that. I'd like to hear a developer say, that would make sense if this, that, and this,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could pay for it, $8 million to this, that, and this, and then my revenues would be that, this, and this, and that would make a project that works in its so many years.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that might be something to look into.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I mean, if we come in and we're saying we're gonna cover the cost of the $8 million for the function that Biz has right now, that might not be the function for the, you know, the person who buys it. So are they going to come in and take out everything we just did anyway? So I think that's a great start, at least having that conversation. You know, they may say, well, we need you to do A, but then we will take over B, C, D when we purchase it, type of thing. So I think that would be a good person to cross paths with and get that experience to at least understand.
And I think going back to Gildersleeve, getting a true number, if we can, or close to a true number of remediation for that. Because let's say we get down to the point where we're going to remediate and tear it down, and just throwing a number of 600,000 out there. Is someone gonna buy it for 600,000? Is that developable enough for them to, is there enough space for them to get $1 million back, you know, after they build some houses? So that's something to look at, because it's, you know, you gotta put a lot into there to, if you're gonna develop theirs.
Another research I did, and this is kind of in our backyard, the East Haven High School, by Wind Development. They ran a $21.5 million project and converted their former high school into 70 apartments. It's about 104,000 square feet. Then I can give you all the blurbs, but the building was, I forget the original year, but it was right around the same time as Biz, and that's like right in our backyard, so maybe there might be a person there to connect to, or even, you know, go for a visit. It's called the Tyler, if anyone is interested in looking it up. But it's right down in East Haven. Their high school was adaptive reuse to be 55 and older apartments. So that was another thing I
Kristen, do
think
you
we
mind
talked about.
sharing the link, or can
Yeah,
you
yep, I
send
can-
these?
yep.
Because I'd love to read up on that.
Sure, yep, I can definitely do that.
And I tell my clients all the time, knowledge is power.
Yep.
So we've got to get some information. We got to get someone that knows this information. And could
Mhm.
we contact these people
Yep.
in Iowa or wherever you said?
Yeah, because I can look up this wind development company and see
Right.
if they're a local representation somewhere that we could talk with.
Yeah, that goes back to my talking about Wilson Middle School in Middletown. I know I keep going back there, but there's also Old Middletown High, downtown Middletown.
Right.
That's senior
My
housing.
husband did that.
That's been there
So
forever.
that's the
Well,
classic.
Since I was a kid.
Where is that?
Downtown Middletown.
It's on,
Is it?
I know where it is. It's off of North Main.
It's off of Main
Or
Street.
South
Off
Main
of
Street.
Main Street.
Oh,
From the
down that
street
end,
From the
okay.
library.
yeah.
Russell
so
Library.
Russell, yeah.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay.
like that area. But anyway,
Court Street, maybe, upper end of Court.
Okay.
Yeah, Court.
Court.
and Pearl.
And that is apartments?
yeah.
Yeah,
senior
that was
living.
done when I was a kid,
Oh, okay.
so,
I thought
100
you
years
meant
ago.
senior center.
No, it's
Yeah, they,
Bill Middletown High.
gotcha.
So it's a-
And I'm sure they had abatement issues. I'm
Sure.
sure,
Right,
you know, why reinvent the
Mhm.
wheel?
right, right.
Excuse me.
And then another one I found, just like literally readaptivegoogle.com, you know, was Old Taylor High School, and that went up for auction in 2016. A couple purchased it for $500,000, and they made it into, and I think we had brought this up, kind of like a mini open air kind of shopping. So they have shopping, they have eateries, a craft beer house is in there, a pinball lounge, and different opportunities. They often have different craft venues, so it brings in a lot of the community. So there might be something to look into there. They do have 12 apartments on the upper floor, and then I think they have 31 small businesses that, rent space through them. That was a 1923 high school. And once again, like I said, I can share these links, but I think they're just good resources just to see what others are doing out there. A lot that you do research is a lot of apartment buildings, retirement type age, senior living, so just different ideas. Any other thoughts, at least in regards to Brownstone, Gildersleeve, we can maybe look at a little bit differently?
No, I think we got a plan to try to come up with something. I think if Ken can, or if Dave can see if that new report has a little more information on
More
what they're
detail.
looking at for abatement, and then Ken can put together a matrix, and we can kind of have a somewhat of a.
Yep.
Well, it should be repriced, because right out of the gate, we know it's too much money.
Right.
To
Right,
demo
sure.
the
Yeah.
building.
Abatement.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
by triple almost, you know, probably.
Do we know all of the services that were lacking space, like we talked about, Park and Rec? if these-
Park and Rec, and then the food bank.
Pantry.
Another one I heard, I don't think they're suffering for space. A friend of mine, the prom dress,
Oh, yeah.
she's currently renting a few in the storage facility, so, I mean, I don't think she needs a lot of space, but that might be something that would appreciate having a better presence than, in the storage, units.
Is there anything, that you know of that, needs space, town departments, or, yeah? Thanks.
Yeah, he's off.
Dan Beret, town planner. Not as far as I know. It's certainly Parks and Rec, though. Andy has talked with me about that. Certainly having their own dedicated space, lack of gym space, that kind of stuff. But otherwise, you know, it can be a little tight in town hall. But you know, I think we have enough space. I know land use. Hopefully, we're going to clear out a bunch of file cabinets. We did rearrange the fire marshal's office. They needed more space. But I think we have enough currently for our staff. I certainly am only speaking for myself in this matter, and not the town, everybody in town.
Thanks, Scott.
Is there, to follow up on that, is there request from town folk of rentable space, and roughly like what types of space they're looking for? Is it just meeting space, venue space?
Not rentable space in that sense, really.
Sure.
Or restate your name?
Temporary town planner. Honestly, it's more probably industrial property that I've had trouble with lately, and uses that want to go in there. But we've been busy with development. We have a lot in the works, a lot planned to go in. So, but yeah, like renting meeting space or anything like that. I don't get totally involved with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But certainly, I love this building. From a meetings perspective, I would like a different room to meet in. Either go back to the library or just have a better space. Certainly in the summertime, when the air conditioning's going, this is not a good room for meetings.
Acoustic,
It's loud.
you mean? Yeah.
Those air handlers are very loud. So
You'll see-
certainly, I love the building, I love the facade of this building, but this can be challenging from a meeting space perspective, and I think it's challenging for Pete from a technology perspective. Kind of, you know, they make it work, but I think they've had to hodgepodge all this together.
We've heard Oak Hill would like some more space over and above what they.
Yeah, I think they
normally
deal
own.
with the Board of Ed,
Oh, they
so
do?
I'm totally outside of
That
that.
might be something to ask is, how much space do
Right,
they?
how many classrooms, what
would
type of
be
space,
the-
yeah.
The dream for space for them?
Well, and what could be the return?
Right.
You know, I think it might be hard for the town to be a landlord for another school.
Well, and like you'll hear, it's still gonna cost $8 million.
Right.
Right.
Where you go, it's still gonna cost $8 million.
Right.
so-
We can't
I
not
don't-
do the work and throw somebody
Yeah.
else in there. It's
Right.
like, you know.
Still gonna cost $8 million, unless
I
you
trade my
get
car
somebody
in
to
because
pay
it
the
needs
$8 million.
brake space, so it's
Right.
you.
That's what the challenge is finding the grants and the money and the partnership and
Capital
the.
campaign.
All that, yeah. In the sale of Gildersleeve and all the other opportunities that could possibly pay to keep that
Right.
building.
But also, Ken, you brought up an excellent point earlier, is I don't want to speculate on what the terms of the solar panel lease agreement say, you know, but I know on my own house, I'm just going through this process now, and one of the reasons why we are not gonna do solar is that the buyout is like $100,000. And that's just on my house. I can't imagine what the value of the system, I'm not gonna guess, the value of the system that's on Brownstone and what that payout might be if you break that lease. Or if you don't, I mean, the alternative is normally for any potential buyer to take on that lease. You know, that's the other option. But if somebody wants the building and doesn't want the solar, then we're left holding the bag as the town.
Right.
Yeah, and that may be a pro to a partnership, or a con to a
Correct.
sale.
Right.
Or, you know. um,
I think the one thing is evident that we have our work cut out for us on two buildings that aren't really home runs. One building that has a lot of sentimental heartstrings attached to it. The other building, a lot of people think because of the space, it's a home run. We can either tear it down or sell it the way it is, and some developer's gonna come in there and make his 2 or 3 million, which that's not the case. So it's a difficult challenge that we have to try to come up with something to give options to the town, because they want to know what's happening, and unfortunately, we might put some options up there that aren't going to be well accepted.
Well, out of the gate, shouldn't we find out what they're worth if we sold them outright as is?
Yeah.
That's what
How
I,
much?
right.
How much would we get? I would guarantee it wouldn't be that much.
Right.
I hate to say it, you know, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer, but it's not gonna be
It
a
ain't
lot.
gonna be 8 million.
It's not. No.
So I guess
At
that's
the end of the
a,
day, the land that those buildings sit on may
Is
be
more.
more valuable than the buildings themselves.
Right.
true.
Well, there's a tax.
But by the time you tore down the building and sold the land, how much is gonna be left?
Correct.
Yeah, there's also a tax base there, but
Right.
it's not there now.
Right,
Correct.
correct, yeah.
Not that that's immense, but it could be.
Do we have the assessed value? Do you have the town card that has the assessed value of the property?
I have somewhere in here.
And we can get the appraised, I mean, that, it's the town, but.
Let's see, the Gildersleeve, the current land, this was the 2023 grand list. The appraised value for the land was 990,000. The current building was 3.463 million, totaling just shy of 4.5. That's the appraised value.
Okay.
Total.
Wow, generous.
Yeah. Saying that. We should take the money and run.
Put it in the Hartford Courant tomorrow.
So the current land at
I'll sell it.
The current land at Brownstone appraised value for the land was 472,000. The current building, 5.3 million, totaling together just over 5.8 million.
All right. Sell them both.
Wow.
So I guess so we can talk about options, and feel free to throw any additional ones out there in regards to Brownstone. When we were talking about Gildersleeve, we had thrown out some ideas of more senior living. Is there potential of that Gildersleeve becomes like the senior center? So that's where all the activity happens, and then potentially building senior housing in the field in the back. Thoughts on that, or any additional ideas for the
Well, I guess,
Gildersleeve?
I think my thing is we gotta kind of say, are we gonna be a landlord or are we gonna be a seller?
Mhm.
You know, because you're talking about 55 housing, all that stuff,
Sure.
somebody else can do that. So
Who's gonna own
I
that?
mentioned on when we were doing the tour that I think our next step, we really need to get a professional real estate or a commercial real estate person in here, both give us some ideas and some money values. And maybe we get some developers in here, give us some ideas. We'll try to get the cost for their remediation, and they can say, hey, it's worth this with the building, it's worth this without the building. You know, it costs this to tear it down, and I think we've got two different scenarios. I think Gildersleeve's a different scenario than
Mhm.
Brownstone.
Mhm.
You got to kind of treat them a
That
little
doesn't have the
separately.
emotional
Yeah.
draw that Brownstone does. So if we're looking at folks to reach out to,
I would say-
commercial real estate,
Right,
developer,
developer.
I do have an email into, it used to be BGW Architects in Middletown. They do a lot of historical preservation projects. So I will follow up with them just in case they have any kind of input in regards to Brownstone.
Who is that?
BGW, it's now the Northeast Collaborative.
Oh, yeah.
Or they may have contacts that can lead
Yep,
to something.
agreed.
else, you know.
Yep. Who else would make sense to start to connect with?
Think-
And I'm not gonna speak for Bob or anybody, but I'm
Mhm.
sure we will make accommodations if they want to come over and look at the properties or the buildings, you know,
Mhm.
at their leisure, you know, before the next meeting,
Okay.
get some ideas, if they're willing.
I could reach out to some developer contacts that I have. If you want me to list them off, I could, but
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind taking charge of that. And I was gonna reach out to that Wynn developer who did the East Haven High School, that Wynn Development
and then
rehab.
also a commercial real estate broker. I don't know if you know, the folks over at Brainerd would be interested in giving some input on what they think of just that piece of property at Gildersleeve.
Mm.
Or
Brownstone.
Or
yeah.
Brownstone. I don't think that's their bailiwick,
Mm.
from what I know of them, but.
What?
What they do.
Bailiwick. It's an old term.
Bailiwick?
Bailiwick.
Never heard that.
He's from out of town.
Guess so.
Sorry. I'm from Middletown.
Okay, there you go. That explains it.
This is the Crystal Lake
I think
water.
identifying a
Sorry.
potential developer that has experience, you know, doing
Right.
adaptive reuse of these types of buildings, because they see the true value.
Mhm.
Right.
Everybody else is gonna go back and sharpen their pencils and do some homework, where if you're dealing with a developer that's done this already,
Yeah.
you know, that might be the best starting point.
Yeah, and I think this, like I said, this Wynn Development, because they did East Haven High School, I don't know if they're local to Connecticut or where they are, if they're a huge firm, but I think that might be a good start because they did that, adaptive reuse right there at the high school, so they might be a good starting point. Agree with you, Brian, on that. Any other thoughts in regards to, I know that we talked about Oak Hill being a school opportunity that might want to rent classrooms. I can assume that they probably don't want the whole building, but is there any other local schools like a Wesleyan or I think MCC has some building in Middletown? Is there any other charge in reaching out to other schools like a CREC or anything? I know we briefly talked about that the
But
last
that was
time.
if we were going to keep the building and be a landlord, is that correct?
Yeah,
I
because
think so.
we still gotta, we
We
still
gotta decide
gotta
if we're gonna
put the
keep it.
8 million in it. So do we wanna at this point look at, okay, we're going to invest money into it and try to get rent to pay that off in
Mhm.
5-6 years? Or that could be one, like
think that's one of
Ken
the
said, one
options,
of the
yeah.
options he puts. And then another option is if we're going to sell this
Mhm.
and bring in a developer like Wynn.
Right.
So I think we have two actual separate columns, whether we're bringing people in that we're gonna maintain, we're gonna keep the building, they're gonna pay us rent. And then the other option is we're gonna sell the building to a developer that's gonna keep it to the standards that we put forth in the sale of the project, or the building.
So we should start the list.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be,
Right.
it's gonna be a lot.
Sell as is.
Sell as
What
is.
you just said.
Yeah.
Walk away
Sell
from.
as is.
Brownstone,
Can't do
ABCD,
this, this, and this
Gildersleeve,
to it.
ABCD. I have a colleague who works at the Wesleyan University in their facilities department. I can reach out to them and at least start a conversation. Would they even be interested? Do they have any need for square footage? You know, and he could just be like, no, thanks, but I feel like if we're making those connections, I can reach out to him and see.
Crazy over there.
Mm.
I mean,
They
we
are,
have-
Oh,
yeah,
I mean, why not?
yeah,
I would.
okay, I can do that.
I mean, right now, Oak Hill rents a couple rooms, 2 or 3 rooms, and they did have an interest in expanding that, so maybe Dr. Britton can help, and I can coordinate and reach out to one of those, because there are 2 or 3 of those big Wheeler, there's those big organizations in town that use space like that for their special ed needs students. And quite honestly, I don't think you want to go down this path, but, you know, I've spoken to a couple of the superintendents, and they've said that these places they go to are so expensive that if someone would create a regional facility, you get the East Hamptons and the Glastonburys, the
Yeah.
Middletowns, and the people that send their kids there, if it was at a discount, you know, than what they're paying at the professional places, they have a lot of overhead. Now, we wouldn't want to run that, but maybe
Right.
there is somebody
Given
out there
the
that
space,
would want to
yeah.
run something like that here.
Maybe we sell them to the school.
Okay, other thoughts? So I think we have a good list of contacts that we can start reaching out to. Commercial real estate developers, I will follow up the Northeast Collaborative in regards to historical preservation. And I can reach out to Wesleyan, my contact there. Does anyone know anyone at Oak Hill, or who would the contact be? You think it's a superintendent potentially, or is anyone?
I can.
Do you wanna
connect-
take over
yeah,
that? Okay.
Put my name down there. I'll speak
Okay.
with Dr. Britton and
Okay.
Dawn Davis.
Angela, would it be okay to ask you to look at the commercial real estate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll talk with Carl
Okay.
and come up with that.
Okay. Do we know anybody at the Brainerd person that would be a
Yeah,
person
there's a
that
guy
would-
over there in the Johnson outfit.
Oh,
He
hi.
would be able to.
Would you have a contact for us?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone want to take ownership of that connection?
Ryan will handle it.
You got it? Okay.
In his spare
In his spare time.
Okay. Any other folks that we should reach out to?
That's Penny.
Yeah,
said you
developers, I mean,
got a couple developers,
Yep.
right?
Lexington Partners for
Yeah.
one. New Haven Realty is another one.
Yeah.
They're a developer. And then I just gotta put my thinking cap on.
Okay.
And they'll probably be able to point me in the right direction if they can't, if they're not.
Okay.
Actually, I think Lexington Partners would be a great developer to bring in to talk about things with us,
Okay.
Okay.
with or without Biz or Gildersleeve specifically in mind, but, you know, just because they're good. They're part of Laz Parking, and
Oh, okay.
they do a lot of development.
So they're
all over the
local
north.
here, or?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
Harvard.
Okay. Do you want to make
I'll
that
reach out
connection,
to
or?
the-
Okay.
Yeah, and a couple others, and as I come up with names, I'll let you know.
Okay. Do you want me to take ownership of the wind development
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Yep.
And,
Are we looking for people to come into the next meeting to speak? What are we looking for? Just,
I think if we can, I don't think it hurts to get people to come in. I think obviously because our report is, fastly approaching the deadline, so I think the
Yes.
sooner that we can get folks here to at least get perspective might help lean us one way or the other in some of the options. When is that
If
next?
they need any background information or a tour, we can try to facilitate ahead of time.
That's
So they don't
true.
come in
That's
cold,
Right.
to that meeting and not know what they need to know.
so Bob, can we contact you directly if we have someone that wants to tour the schools? I know where to find you. Behind the chair.
My staff is there in the evenings during the week, and we're just weekends right now.
I didn't have my phone on with me, so I have my phone, but I never put all the meetings in here.
If I'm here, I can cover the
Thank you.
so speaking of 6:27, but speaking of the timing and bringing people in, the question in my mind is once a month enough to do what we have to do? I think we can come up with something in short order, but the quality of that something is what's in question in my
Mhm.
mind.
Right.
And, I'm just wondering if once a month is enough, given that it's June, we need to have, our goal was to have something put down kind of in June, and then, for referendum in November, there's that time, but we really kind of got to be solid with it in June.
I think at this point, we need to start adding another meeting each
Do we do it
month.
like every
I'd hate
3
to
weeks
do
or
it,
every other week?
But just from, I think, because there is so much information we need to digest, that this component is new to every one of us sitting here, that I think we need to, in the beginning, get some more time into it. And then, once we get maybe some of this people to come in and speak to us, to educate us, I think what we need for these speakers that are gonna come in. And then we can maybe, if we start getting set up on a track where we might be able to go back to once a month, we'll do that. But I think now it's important to get some people, professionals in their field to come in and give us some education.
Because it's 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Meetings, 3 meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
If we're gonna have some by June, it's April, May,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We
Right.
can do that math.
No, absolutely.
April
And you went to Middletown.
Yeah.
April 1st?
But the other thing is, I wouldn't, just thinking out loud, what the additional meeting does for us is, it does allow us to brainstorm maybe a little bit more while maybe we're waiting. We have a guest come in to speak with us for a portion of the time. We need to
Right.
limit the time, and then we brainstorm. We need to
Mhm.
start, I think, putting stuff
that work
down.
session, yeah.
Just to get pieces of this on paper.
Yep,
That's my suggestion.
yeah, agreed. Okay.
When's
All right, where did all those meetings go? Okay, so we had our next meeting is not till April 15th.
so do you wanna do,
April 15th,
what's the first?
May 20th,
Do you wanna
and
do
June 17th.
the 1st or the 8th or the 22nd?
I think we might, just because we're reaching out to folks in hopes that they present, I think if we give them a little bit of time to
So
agree to
do-
come in, might be
Like do one
helpful.
after the 15th?
Let's see, what is today? Today is the 18th. So maybe the
8th and the 22nd.
8th or the 22nd, yeah.
8th and the 22nd, we can skip the 15th. That's 2, 2, and 2.
Yeah. Would that mess everybody up?
Or
if-
you could consider leaving the meeting on the 15th and having another meeting on, say, the 1st.
Right. And then bring people in for the 15th if we had to, right?
Or you have a meeting.
Yeah.
So, okay, so say that
Add
again.
in
So
one meeting.
keep the April 15th,
And
And
add
add-
them to the 1st.
May 1st?
I
No.
think
April
April
1st.
April.
April 1st, okay.
Is that what we're saying, April 1st?
Mhm.
2 weeks.
Yep.
So April 1st, yes.
Hold on.
If I can suggest something?
Yes.
Yes.
So you have your regular meeting schedule set up.
Correct.
You can hold special meetings at any time. We can cancel a regular meeting if necessary. So if you want to talk to your developer contacts first, see what timeline they have, and then we can plan from there. You can let, Michelle know or myself, and then we can try to set that up for you. So we can be kind of responsive. So if you don't want it, you can, maybe have the 1st and the 8th kind of, penciled in. If they can turn around and give you guys actual information on the 1st, we can hold on the 1st. If not, do it the 8th.
Okay.
And kind of proceed from there.
How-
Just
Sorry, how much of a heads up do you need to know that we're planning a special meeting on the 1st?
24 hours.
24
So
hours,
the
okay.
agenda needs to be posted 24 hours before. Certainly, the more time, the better. I think people find that 24-hour rule is, people are surprised by that. And the more lead time, the better, just so, the public's aware.
Okay, thank you.
So the one scheduled already
Is
that
the-
we had the 15th.
The 15th, yep.
Okay.
Okay, so then we can look at
this
that.
point, we need to get a little more education here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're just gonna be.
Otherwise, we're just talking, right?
Yeah,
We're just doing this
back
again,
and forth,
right, right.
back and forth, and
Right,
nothing's gonna
yeah.
get done.
No, we gotta get the experts in. So I think if we have some homework assignment, I think we all kind of have the folks that we want to reach out to. And like you said, if we plan for the 1st or the 8th, we can
Yeah.
schedule that. So we have a little bit of time to be able to do that. That's 2 weeks out. Right, April, March. Yeah, 2 weeks from today. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? So we'll pencil in April 1st or 8th, and we can communicate of who we potentially would have come and speak.
Yep.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, are we good? Do we want to open it up to, for public comment?
Hey guys, I've been making, Ryan Curley, for selectmen, I've been making a list, and one of them, thank you Ken, was, do you want to meet more often? You covered it. Just, so I didn't want to interrupt, because honestly, this was a really great discussion. I think you guys are really putting some great thought into this, and I want to thank you all for attending that walkthrough. I thought it was pretty eye-opening, you know, seeing both of those schools and you know, the condition that they're in and exploring potential, you know, reuses for them. Just to go through some of the conversations from tonight's meeting, I can check with Friar Architecture. They are currently redoing their estimates. They're firming up their estimates as far as what the cost of our school proposals are, as well as we did ask them to look at that demolition potentially of Gildersleeve and what that cost would be. I can ask them about the hazardous materials to see how much. It may already be in the report. I'd have to look at the report that, I believe you guys have the report.
We do, yeah, I think it's all in there.
So they may be able to provide that information more easily, just how much hazardous material is in the school. But they will be able to provide a better price as far as you know, demolition goes. To circle back to the discussion on the solar panels on Brownstone, I did talk with one of the people at the Green Bank, the Connecticut Green Bank, as far as that's who the town partnered with to get the solar panels. So I did have a conversation with them, and they said that the good news is that, you know, as Brian alluded to, we would be able to transfer the ownership of those solar panels. That shouldn't be a problem, as long as whoever, let's say we were to sell this, whoever is purchasing that building would have to use the same amount of power or more in order for that to work. But she also is going to get back to me with some more information about buying out too, because we have a contract that we signed that we have, and you know, it could be expensive to buy out if we had to. So that's something that I'll do the work on that to find out, you know, what that is. She said she's going to get back to me on that. Also, the link, Kristen, you're talking about for the, I think it was East Haven you're talking about? Why don't you put that link in the meeting minutes too, I think. That way everybody can see, you know, what you're talking about. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the more people we talk to, the better. And I think you guys are all on the right track as far as, you know, there's other towns that have been through this before.
Sure.
And there's developers that have been through this before. And so if we can tap into any of that and get some of that knowledge to help us, I think all the better. And I think, Oak Hill too. So Dr. Britton did reach out to Oak Hill. I was on that email. That was a couple months ago now, and so I'm trying to remember what came of it. I mean, nothing tangible right now, but that's not to say they don't need more space. And I actually have a meeting this week with the gentleman from Edelbrook facility as well, and we're going to be talking about just potential, you know, maybe Gildersleeve property would be beneficial for you know, some type of facility like that. So just so you know, those are the things that we're working on. But I do think, as you pointed out, as Dave pointed out, if you know, the bond goes forward and we do this school project, we are going to have to use these buildings to put the children in while the construction happens. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's important that you guys are on the right track talking about space for Parks and Rec and if possible, the food bank. And I think you know, if there's a way, I know as Brian said, it's difficult to piece out biz and you know, lease it out and say, but let us keep the gym. You know, that would be nice. But it's something, I'm glad you guys are being mindful of all that. I think you guys are on the right track, and I'm glad you are offering to meet more than once a month, because it's important, so, thank you
Right.
all.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Anybody
Thanks,
has any
Ryan.
questions for me over here?
I don't
Try to
think so.
cover it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to give you an update, I have reached out to the city of Middletown and the planner there, Merrick, for information on the renovation of at least the Woodrow Wilson School. I can certainly double up and see if there's anything for the prior school, probably not too much. I just haven't received that material back, so when I do get it, I'll get it out to you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Shea, Director of Facilities for the schools. Your hazardous materials in the schools, I will let you know this, that Gildersleeve has a lot less than Brownstone. In the forms of asbestos, I have reports, including our 6 months asbestos surveillance that was just done in January. So Gildersleeve is looking at more of a floor tile and elbows in the heating system situation above the ceiling tiles. Brownstone has a lot of different categories, including, pipes and elbows, tile, insulation and fire doors, miscellaneous stuff. So in that regard, it's up to a contractor on how they like to dispose. If they just knock it down and pile it all in one and call it hazardous material, or they abate those, areas first, which might be more cost efficient, but that would be up to that estimating side of it. But I have those documents if you'd like them. They might be different than what was offered in some of the prior stuff because it was earlier. We did an abatement in 2018, which was a bunch of tile work, about 650 square feet of that at Gildersleeve, and the remaining is just a few different categories that are there.
When was the prior report done?
So,
Prior to that, prior to 2000?
prior was probably 4 years.
The
Right around
report,
the same time,
Okay.
so it could be included or not.
Okay.
Some of that work that we did back then. And we had a study done in 20, which shows basically the balance of some floor tiles and basically what's left at Gildersleeve. So that should be able to,
that's what we got.
Answer
in,
some
in
questions.
the report we got, was in 2020.
that's it.
Okay.
But there's no specific quantities, so that's what we need to ask Fryer.
Mm.
It's just areas, square footage, they probably didn't do that. So
Yeah.
one is a kitchen space, which is a very small area, and then the other would be every elbow, how many elbows, how
Right.
much pipe. Yeah.
Which I didn't look, when you're standing in that boiler room, you can see it, but I can't see outside of the boiler room.
And above all the ceiling tiles.
Yeah.
All the transfers.
So they may say, you need to contact Eagle to do another, quantification of exactly how many elbows and EAT you have, or whatever. But that would be the next step to know. So when you're asking Fryer, that's what we're gonna wanna know. Thank you.
Yeah, and roof, we fight roof issues every day. They're more or less of a nuisance type of situation where the membrane over time is shrinking. Gildersleeve, yes, there was a lot of previous penetrations that caused ceiling tile damage. There is no AC in that building, so it's not a condensation issue or heating issue. Usually that comes from the condensation caused by the lack of insulation of, a chilling system, and we don't have that there. So it's primarily the roof. We've probably mitigated 99% of those, but every heavy rainstorm, we usually find one particular area. And we do have a program, we use a fairly good company. As a matter of fact, they were at 3 of our schools today, so. But with that said, it's good to note that both of those, primarily Gildersleeve, if it was to remain standing, would need probably a new roof, because the one that's on it is fairly old. And that goes along with all the schools. I mean, the high school's 18 years old, and we're fixing that every day too, and that's gonna stay, so.
And how old is that roof, Gildersleeve?
It's all of that.
It's ready to
Close
go.
to 20, 25 years in different pieces, depending on, the additions that were put on. 92, I think, was the latest addition, so that roof is as old as that. Some other areas are just as old.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I reached out to a friend, I'm
Could you
Maggie Scott from the Board of Ed, and obviously you guys have got a good start to coming up with some great ideas. I did reach out to a friend, Lon Seidman, who's a colleague, and he lives in Ivyton. He serves on the board of ed in Region 4, but he also is knowledgeable about what Old Saybrook and Essex have done with a private foundation that developed affordable housing. And in 2022, with Ryan's support and Mary Dickerson's good work, I was able to push the ball forward, and we have an affordable housing plan here in Portland. And although we do have 8.5% affordable housing units, which is remarkable, you know, the state and Middlesex County in general just have a shortage of affordable housing. I know that's come up in the conversation, and so with your permission, I would give Ryan or give Kristen the name of Lon Seidman. He can either come and talk to you about what's been done with private funding and private foundation, and that's interesting because they also refurbished a couple of buildings into affordable housing. So
Okay.
The more the merrier, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm very impressed with all of you. Just a great start to this conversation, and obviously I have interest in how this outcome comes about, and sooner rather than later, so I understand the need to meet every other week.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yes, look forward to that information. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll get it from you. Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay.
So I'd like to just bring up one thing. I have to step down from the secretary role. I'll stay on the commission I'll stay on the commission, but I just don't have the time, I think, to give it what I think it needs.
If, it's up to you, if anybody would like to be secretary, it's fine. If no one would like to be secretary, that's also fine. Well, I believe, I'll have to see, but we should be able to get you a recording secretary. I think that this is too important to not have a recording secretary, so I appreciate you taking the lead, Kat. If you can't do it, it's totally fine. We'll figure it out. So
I have minutes from today.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
sent an email.
Do we have anyone interested in doing secretary?
Anybody interested?
I mean, I do take notes, but I.
I think Angela said no. No.
Yep, she said. All right, is there any other comments? I think we all have our next steps. We will look to schedule additional meetings if and when necessary on April 1st or April 8th. All right.
Did we decide there was a meeting April 1st?
I think we're going to pencil that in regards to if we are reaching out to some of the presenters that we're asking to come in, if the 1st works for them versus the 8th. I think there's some flexibility in there. We just have to keep in mind that there's a 24-hour notice that we need to let the town know that we're hosting special meetings at that point.
it would be Friday.
Oh, right. Yeah, so Friday before the Monday. Yes, fair. Yep, that's fair. So the Friday before the Monday meetings. Thank you, Ryan. All right. So I guess if that is it, I call for adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. All opposed?
All opposed?
Hearing none.
Hearing none? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the conversation.